Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. This is episode 57, El Rio del Tiempo, where we'll be taking you back to the original Mexico Pavilion boat ride that is now the Three Caballeros. All right, but before we get to that, sitting in with me, as always, from his shelter in Ohio, JT, how you doing tonight?
I am great. I'm excited to get to World Showcase. I was just telling you guys the other day, this would probably be, if I could go out to the world and do something fun, that would be wander Epcot. Just go enjoy myself. I love wandering the countries, and especially Mexico. And I love the real Mexico, too. So
there we go. And a lot of these old Epcot films we've been showing are a lot in World Showcase.
Yes, taking me back to my childhood.
That's right. There we go. And coming to us from Tampa, Florida, the new home of two expatriates from the football world, Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing tonight, JT? I mean, how you doing tonight, Hal? We got everything messed up.
Aloha. Doing fine. Doing fine.
Good. How's it? You got the T-shirt going tonight, so it must be balmy out.
Oh, yeah. It's lovely. It's about, let's see, 76, 78 degrees outside tonight.
Oh, come on.
Lovely.
Oh, man. So you only have about another month and a half of the indoor season, the outdoor season, right? So
yeah.
You're going indoors soon.
Our winter summer will be starting up soon enough.
That's right. Exactly. And coming into us from social distancing himself, Mr. Brian P. Miles. How you doing tonight, Brian?
Greetings and salutations from a safe 6-foot distance.
That's right. We're Zoom apart from each other. So, all right. Well, we're going to jump right into this month here. We'll go right to the mailbag. JT, what do you got coming in this month?
Boy, we are going right to the mailbag.
I caught you off guard, didn't I?
I know. Well, I don't know. I was going through all the mail, and I was looking at it's been forever since we were SeaWorld was the last episode, wasn't it?
Yes, it was the
Good Neighbors SeaWorld focused.
SeaWorld, yeah.
That's crazy. It feels like it was like 4 years ago, but so in the mail showed. So thank you for your letters. Thank you for your notes. I appreciate all that in the mailbag. We all do.
People love SeaWorld, by the way, right? I mean,
big hits.
How about all the feedback we got on that episode?
Yeah.
Only a little bit of hate mail this time, not the normal bag of hate mail that I have to sift through. So,
and by the way, guys, I just restored a film, speaking of Good Neighbors, that has Circus World and a little bit of SeaWorld on it, and includes part of the Hawaiian Punch Village in there, too.
Nice.
Pretty cool. So we'll get that out.
Okay, so the first one is from Cory Crowley. Cory says, just discovered the podcast, and I am 30 episodes in and can't thank you guys enough for the content. As someone that grew up in South Florida and went a lot in the mid-'80s, you helped bring back a lot of memories. Cory goes on to say that their current DVC members still get down there once a year, and a historian of sorts for their 7-year-old child. So they all thank us for the content, and Cory just bought some shirts as well. So welcome aboard, Cory, and we appreciate your listening and your support. Here's some SeaWorld stuff. This is actually from Steve Peterson. Steve says he enjoyed the podcast on SeaWorld Orlando. He actually grew up in Southern California and never really knew much about SeaWorld in Orlando. He says he remembers a little bit of SeaWorld San Diego was built to encourage tourism in San Diego and to compete with Marineland, which was in a suburb of Los Angeles. He went to Marineland a few times, and he kind of went on to compare the two to SeaWorld, saying it was impressive, had great attractions. He says he thinks that's why SeaWorld purchased it in 1986 and promptly closed it in 1987. I don't think SeaWorld San Diego has ever caught on as attraction in LA, kind of like it did in Orlando. So thank you for that, Steve. We appreciate your insight into SeaWorld San Diego, and definitely lots of good stuff relating to the Orlando version as well. Next up, this is kind of a good one. We get a lot of these. This is from our friend Scott Murray. Scott says he has some Super 8 film without sound from the 60s, he thinks, of Walt Disney World. He had it transferred to digital probably 20 years ago, and he wondered if we were interested. Now, we get these often, whether it's VHS, High 8, VHS-C, Super 8 with sound, 16 millimeter, all sorts of emails and people saying, are you interested in our footage? You guys can chime in and correct me if I'm wrong, but we're interested in almost any footage that we'll say is Disney, I don't know what, pre-94 at this point, pre-93, in that range. And, especially if it is something that you're considering getting digitized, you want to share it with Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, anything like that, we're definitely interested in. So just kind of reach out to us and let us know what you have, maybe a good idea of what's on the film and where it's at, and we'll talk from there. But it's definitely something we're always curious what you have, and it could very well end up restored on our YouTube channel, or even during a movie night.
And if what he has is really 1960 Walt Disney World, that's got to be very, very early construction. So that's something we'd want to say.
Was your grandfather a construction worker who owned an 8mm camera? That's
right. That's the key.
Okay. Next one here is from Abby. Abby wrote to us, and this is actually relating because in between our last episode and this episode, we had our Horizons night, didn't we? That was after SeaWorld, I believe.
Yep. The Horizons Revisited release.
It came up in kind of the group chat on there during the live stream about the GE commercial that used the Horizons footage. So Abby sent us a link to that from the 2002, I believe. Is that the right year? 2002 GE commercial? Were the Winter Olympics in 2002?
Yep.
Yes, they were in Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake City was 2002. Okay. She says the DNA sequence is at the 44-second mark, and maybe GE has the source Omninax film. So I don't know if they do or not, but either way, we will put a link to this commercial in the show notes. And on top of it, if you do work for GE and you do have the source Omnimax footage, we would love to have that as well.
Yeah, I took a look at that, and it definitely is the same DNA spinny sequence, if you will. Definitely pretty cool.
So they reused it. Very cool. All right, our next one here. This is from Michael George, and Michael wrote us an interesting story, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase here the best I can because it's a long one. He left a voicemail on this one as well. He says, the spring of 1990, he was in the college program working at Liberty Inn. One of his rotations working at the hot dog stand out in front of American Adventure. On Easter Sunday, it was quiet, and his coworker and I thought it would be a great idea to fill out a bunch of these I have an idea forms that are in the break rooms. I didn't know this was a thing, but to me it sounds like a Disney version of a suggestion box. Basically, it's a legal document that they triplicate and has a carbon copy, and it's offered some sort of compensation based on the revenue or cost savings as a result of implementing your idea. He went on to say that he submitted an idea for the Sci-Fi Dine-In Cafe. He says, as an 18-year-old kid, I wasn't smart about saving the triplicate form, and I never really thought much about the idea I submitted. You can imagine my surprise when watching the Travel Channel a few years later to see the pan across the Sci-Fi Dine-In Theater. You guys know that view that they always sort of do on the... it was sort of in the spring of, he says, 1990. When we visit, my kids always say, "Hey, Dad, let's go to your restaurant." I sure would like to be in the project folder of imagining to see the idea forms and if it's in there at all. See, it seems like quite a coincidence. Sorry. So thanks a lot, Mike. We appreciate that note. If they did use your idea, well, it's a really good idea, and too bad you didn't get a little kickback from that one. So.
You do see a fair number of the cast members who were there for a while in the 70s and 80s reference those idea forms, which were throughout the property, and cast members were encouraged to suggest things that might make things run smoother or make an improvement to the guest experience or to the operations. And a lot of them got credit for it and have stories of filling those forms out and then getting a letter and a check from Dick Nunes or Bob Matheson or something saying, hey, we used your idea, great idea.
All right, so very clever. Definitely a good idea in an organization like that where it's the little guy has a voice. That's super awesome. Do they do it anymore?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I doubt it.
All right, well, thanks, Mike. We appreciate that. If you would like to reach out to us, end up on the show possibly, podcast at RetroWDW.com. We try to get to all of that as best we can. If we don't reply, it's probably because we have a super loaded mailbag, but we try to reply to almost everything as often as possible. So thanks for all your letters.
And Brian, I apologize. I skipped over corrections and comments. You had a correction and comment for last month's SeaWorld episode.
I was disappointed in myself when I listened to the playback of the episode because I talked about the hula pie that was in the Hawaiian Punch Village restaurant. But I failed to mention, the food historian, failed to mention that its origins are Duke's Restaurant in Waikiki is famous for their hula pie. And the version in the Hawaiian Punch Village in SeaWorld was a butter pecan-based ice cream pie. But the one that's the original from Duke's is actually a macadamia nut ice cream pie, being in Hawaii. Same type of thing, giant, like, foot-tall pie like they serve at the boathouse. And, chocolate fudge all over the pie and everything. So it's but there was a historical reason why they were offering that hula pie at the Hawaiian Punch Village, and it's because you can today still get the original at Duke's in Waikiki.
There we go. Cool. Excellent. All right, gentlemen, I think before we do the audio rewind and jump into this month's topic, JT, you reminded me, we can't even remember what we did since the last time we recorded a full episode. So
yes.
I think we need a little recap here for our listeners who are new ones or even those just joining recently or longtime listeners of what has transpired. So, yeah, we last released an episode on March 13th, and we've been very busy then with the release of Horizons Revisited in interpolated HD quality, which was one of our top ever viewed YouTube videos until we started to release more and more from Howe's archive, if you will. And we also did our mini episode on the pylon structures in front of Epcot Center, the original pylon fountain, that was great, talking to Gene about that. And then we debuted Home Movie Night. We've been doing that for the past, I think we're going on Home Movie Night 4 this coming Thursday, where we live comment. You get to see us live on YouTube, provide commentary on home movies that nobody's ever seen in years, haven't seen the light of years of days, or haven't seen
the light of day in years.
Light of day, and haven't seen the light of, haven't seen the light of day in years. So it's been really interesting. But gentlemen, I wanted to get your comments on all of the above between Horizons, the mini episode, Home Movie Night. We've got the Easter Parade, just was a huge hit. About 50-some thousand people watched that one on Easter Day. I could not believe it. Our YouTube followers are going through the roof, so we thank everybody out there. But yeah, we haven't been on the air here on the podcast in a while, but boy, we've been busy.
Very busy. We've been trying to fill, since most of the country is in a shelter-in-place thing for the last month or so. We've been trying to push a lot of content out that's been in the on deck circle, and we've gotten great feedback from it. It's really great to interact with people every week on these movie nights, because as we're running them and talking, there's a full running commentary on the side in the comment section on YouTube, and we get to interact with people, which is not something we get on the podcast.
Right. Yeah, we have to save all the comments for later. I think on the upcoming one, I might try to develop our own film, maybe on an upcoming movie night. What do you think? Should we get the developer and the processor out? We'll turn the light, dark room, the whole thing.
I think that would be gripping.
I think we should watch a film live on a podcast and play it on the podcast while we're talking about a film that the audience can't see. That'd be a great idea.
Yes, JT.
That would be our own retro night.
Oh, that's
exactly
right. Eating our own dog food.
Eating our own, yeah. We attempted that years ago and it didn't work.
It seemed like a good idea.
Well, it did, because I think it prompted. Oh, there's the dog.
Speaking of dog food.
Yep. I think it helped us reinforce what to start looking for in some of those films.
There's an interesting thing. If you are a binge listener, go back and watch a video with our audio playing in your AirPods or whatever, like, because we didn't pause or anything. I think we just let it run.
Yeah, we played them right through, so you can actually hear our commentary.
So if you're bored looking for something to do, there you go.
Yeah, and if you don't feel like matching it up, just look at Home Movie Night on our YouTube channel. You got
it's
3 hours.
It's like the Ben and Jerry's Flavor Graveyard. Here's stuff that people didn't like, but you can come and see it.
Exactly. So the other the Home Movie Night number 4 will be passed by the time this is released, and possibly depending on when we release this number 5, it might be coming out. So we don't know what's on deck for number 5, but we can tell you that number 4, which we just had the other night, it's on April 22nd. That one featured a fantastic film narrated by a couple from Georgia, Harold and Yvonne Jenkins. We just turned ourselves off and let the commentary speak for itself, because it's just a golden 16 minutes of fantastic Epcot footage and absolutely fantastic Southern hospitality narration, I guess you could say. So, and we've got a lot of other great stuff coming up. We've got Fort Wilderness Railroad. We've got, Hal, you're going to like this. The Eastern Winds. We have some footage of the Eastern Winds at the dock in the Polynesia.
Lovely.
Unbelievable.
I will like that.
Yeah. Yep.
For those of you who don't know, the Eastern Winds was a Chinese junk ship that sailed the Seven Seas Lagoon and Bay Lake for the first 7 or 8 years of the
That's right.
resort's existence.
And we even have some footage, it's pretty decent footage of a bob around boat motoring across, and
it was actually going across and not
actually moving forward. Yes, and not spinning in circles, which was neat. So again, check us out on YouTube, RetroWDW over there. We've got Home Movie Night and a lot of other videos coming up too. We've got I know the other one, the other video that How did when you recorded the Disney Information Channel at the resort in 1992. We put that on YouTube, and people went absolutely nuts over that and putting it in the background. Some people said they played it on loops. So I'm afraid to look at the amount of time that people have spent watching our videos, probably in the millions of hours. As a society, we may not get back, but at least we're providing some entertainment to you during all the lockdowns and stuff. So, all right. So with that, let's move over to this month's audio rewind. Hal, you're at it again. You did well this month.
Woo!
Had, quite a few people got this. So let's first take a listen, and then we'll let Hal tell you what last month's audio rewind was.
So that was from Impressions de France, the on again off again movie. Now not playing in the French Pavilion.
Limited viewing in the French Pavilion.
Limited gauge.
Yes, at this point, very limited.
So we do have a winner, and that's Steve Tanner. Congratulations, Steve. You're going to receive 3 books from Christopher Smith. We'll get that out to you shortly. And how you have an idea for another. I know you've been doing these audio rewinds here, and we got something to give away before we announce your next one. I have a variety of ephemera, a grab bag mystery package, if you will, that might have all sorts of ticket stubs, magazines, brochures, all sorts of cool stuff that whatever we can kind of cram into a priority mail envelope and get it out to you, we'll put it in there. So a lot of neat stuff that we can get out.
If it fits, it ships.
That's right. Do you remember? Do you remember the other one? 2 pounds. What was it?
2 days, 2 pounds, $2.90.
$2.90. Yes, that's it.
That was the original priority mail.
Yep. If you get fit, that's right. And then if you fits, it ships. We'll get that out to you if you know the answer to this month's Audio Rewind. Be careful of the blob. All right, if you think you know the answers to this month's Audio Rewind, send your guesses to contest@RetroWDW.com. All correct entries will be entered into a random drawing to pick the winner. All entries must be received by May 19th, 2020. All right, well, it's time for this month's main topic, where we're going to take a little bit of a stroll around World Showcase and end up at Mexico. Now,
was that your first country you go to, or your last country?
Generally, we go to the left. I will say, yeah, we go to the left quite often when we go in there, and I think that's because we know it's an easy on, easy off attraction, right? So you're always hot by that point for some reason.
I love that pavilion.
It takes 12 minutes to walk from where the Christmas tree is, right in the center, to Mexico, because it's just so crowded in that area. Yeah. We always tend to go left, and we're usually heading towards Italy to get lunch or something like that too. But anyway, I digress. So, JT, as you mentioned, and I mentioned too, in some of these older films, the walk around World Showcase was very prominent back then. A lot of people didn't take footage of Future World, and it was a different place. But one pavilion that certainly has not changed from the outside aesthetic, and even the majority of the inside, is the Mexican Pavilion. And, we've had people attempt to climb it. It's had some...
Don't climb the stairs.
That's right. It's had some overlays and different things in the past, but for the majority, it is really remains as it was on opening day. It's pretty close to its original.
Is this the only one that had a ride
in World Showcase? Absolutely.
Yeah. Good catch. Yeah, that's right. Because Norway didn't come around until 1985, 86.
89. Hey, well, the end of 88. End of 88, right?
88. That's right. Yes. Willard Scott helped open.
Germany was supposed to get one. They built the show building.
As was Japan.
Japan was supposed to get an attraction. Yep. Did not.
And they were all built with that in mind. So, yeah, good call, JT. That's correct. So, and one of two boat rides inside of Epcot as well. So, Hal has been doing some research, connecting to people on LinkedIn. I believe he was going to take a trip to Mexico, I believe, to do some research, but the social distancing had to keep him away, and we need some more travel funds for that to happen. But Hal, this is your episode. You wrote and directed and produced this one, so you get all the credit. So we will turn it over to you and provide some commentary and such. But I will say, I always love going into the Mexican Pavilion. There's something about that nighttime scene that is relaxing. It takes you worlds away from the hustle and bustle and heat outside. I've always found the attraction fun in both of its incarnations. I do have a soft spot for the original, and especially the end scene, which I think we'll definitely talk about, which much of it remains. But I think there was a little bit of a cheeky characterness, so to speak. Not talking characters in terms of cartoon characters, but the original had a little bit of old school, if you had wings, character to it. So, but I will let Hal take us through that and go from there. So, Hal, it's all yours.
All right. Well, welcome aboard, everybody. And it's true. There's a huge influence of If You Had Wings in that attraction, and that's partially because of let's just start at the beginning. I think that's probably the easiest way to go. So a pavilion representing Mexico had been a prominent feature of the plans of World Showcase as far back as 1975, when it was a separate area from Future World, and then later on they were combined. So it was always kind of in mind to have Mexico be a part of World Showcase. Jack Lindquist was responsible for securing sponsors for Disney, but Disney actually committed to paying for the pavilion regardless of his success or failure. So Mexico was really considered to be a critical attraction for them. Lindquist made several trips to Mexico to convince the Secretary of Tourism to get involved with the project, going so far as to make a pitch to the Mexican president, Luis Escoveira. Disney really wanted direct involvement from Mexico, and they were very sensitive that the pavilion actually represent Mexico in an authentic way. So they worked very hard to try to make that happen. Didn't work out exactly the way that they thought, though, as we'll get into. Ex Extensio was put in charge of the pavilion, probably because of his Latin heritage. He initially worked with Imagineers Tom Gillian and Clem Hall, and probably a bunch of others to do early concept art. But we actually see concept art of the pyramid inside way back. I mean, that's part of the 1975 concept art that's done is very similar setup to what we have right now with a gallery in front, and then opening up to the sort of the nice widespread view with the pyramid in the back. Early plans for the ride put a lot more emphasis on Mexico's colonial period and its 10-year revolution, which took place in the early 20th century. Those plans were shown to Mexico's ambassador to the United States and a group of Mexican foreign exchange students attending UCLA. You remember we talked a couple of times about how they had focus groups at UCLA, and same thing. They did a focus group there, and it produced a really mixed reaction with that crowd. One person described it as saying there were too many piñatas, and that group strongly suggested that WED actually go to Mexico to spend time in the country firsthand instead of just looking stuff up in their library. So it was not a hit from the beginning. Interestingly enough, though, the team did not go south for inspiration, but east. Existencio was involved with the Goes Art Studio and Gallery in East LA, which was the center of a growing movement within Los Angeles' Mexican-American community to take pride in its Mexican and Mesoamerican identity. As you recall, in the 1970s, like being Chicano, that was a new concept. The pride in that, it was very pushed down. You had a few shows like Chico and the Man, and some other things that tried to bring that culture into the forefront and not place that as a negative, but a positive. Mm-hmm. So this group, it's actually fascinating reading about it. This art studio that worked out of East LA, they went to a bunch of different programs in the community that did a lot of good. They did a lot of education with little kids. They had a huge muraling program that they did within the city. Is really remarkable, and reading all the stuff that they were doing was really beautiful and inspirational. But just this whole concept of being proud of who they are, and taking that on, as a distinct thing, and not something to push down or like put away. It's like it was not something that was normal at that time to be proud to be Mexican. So it was a really great thing that they did. And there were two other artists with Hispanic heritage and a Disney connection that were also associated with that art studio. Eddie Martinez and Ray Aragon. Eddie had worked as a scenic painter under John DeCure on the production of the film Hello, Dolly, and then he later came to WED in the 70s to work on murals for the Hall of Presidents and a bunch of other projects, including the art posters for the Country Bear Jamboree. So if you think of that poster of the Country Bear Jamboree that has the Mark Davis drawing on the inside and then like all the wood stuff around it. So Eddie did all the woodworking kind of stuff around it on that poster. He's a fantastic painter. The other gentleman, Ray Aragon, he started with his career at Disney as a layout artist on Snow White. So he had been there an awful long time. But over the years, he also worked as an art director, a production designer, and a storyboard artist on animated and feature films. So both were very experienced artists, and both had, like I said, had a very strong connection to Disney. So Existencio hired Eddie Martinez for a short time in 1976 to work on new concepts for the pavilion, based on the strength of a one-man art show that he did at that gallery, which featured canvases inspired by a trip that Martinez took in Mexico with the Goes Art Studio founder Joe Gonzalez. So he actually spent 2 weeks traveling all around Mexico, painted, really got into the culture, discovered a lot of it for himself, but put this back on his canvases, and that really caught X's eye, and he felt like, okay, here's the vibrancy and the reality of what we need for this project, so I'm going to get him on it.
Where have we heard his name before, too? Did Rolly work with him? Existencio.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, sure. He's very famous as a... he was a longtime Disney artist. He wrote all of the dialogue for Pirates of the Caribbean, and trying to think the other one.
I had to say his name during the Ron Schneider presentation, and I had trouble. So he did something there.
Well, we asked Bob Gurr about him too, Bob and Tom, during their panel at Retro Magic, and Bob Gurr talked about X's background as an artist, and then Walt said, "Hey, I need music for Pirates of the Caribbean," and he's like, "Well, I'm an artist. I'm not a musician." He's like, "Well, write it anyway. Go see." Was it George Bruns? Was it or
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And so he goes over and he ends up writing the catchiest song in the world with "Yo Ho, Yo Ho, A Pirate's Life for Me," and then repeats it 2 years later with The Haunted Mansion. That Grim Grinning Ghost is his song too.
So he did a lot as a writer, and then so they got him back on this again. So early renderings and models of the pavilion show a much more extensive ride than what was finally built. There were full-scale audio animatronic characters used throughout the attraction, including spinning Danza de los Voladores performers in the early pre-Columbian scenes. That's that thing where they get up on the post and spin around. Mm-hmm. So the original idea would have had like full-size pirates life-size characters in there doing stuff like that. Guests would have boarded Trajinero's boats, and I am so sorry for my pronunciation. I know it's going to be awful. I wish I had the time to learn how to say every word properly during this. Those are the boats that you see in the Ocochipitalo canals outside Mexico City. They usually have like the flowers on them and like the big elaborate like wooden things on top. So in early art, you can actually see like pictures of cast members standing on the back of it, perhaps narrating the boat ride as you're going through it, just in these beautiful like flower boats. A lot of these blue sky components were lost though, most likely because of the financial realities. In addition, the design of the building was actually locked in before the attraction design was complete. So they actually had to kind of like refit everything and resize stuff to fit into that building versus, designing everything that they wanted to and then, having the building built around it. So they had a couple of constraints. Definitely financial, though, because, in the end, there wasn't a lot of participation from sponsors. So they had to pull a lot of the original ideas back to make it something that was a little bit more affordable. And that definitely, I think, greatly influences what we actually see in the final attraction, which is still beautiful. I mean, it still came out great.
I always loved that it was like an Imagineering greatest hits because you had the Blue Bayou Pirates opening scene where you're sailing through the restaurant, and then you get inside, and I mean clearly the carnival scene is they pulled Small World dolls and repurposed them for Mexico, and there's a lot of sight gags and things in there that were things that they pulled from other even the bar where the screen follows you and you're that's pulled from what If You Had Wings or one of them other they're all from other things, which makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, and even they ran concurrently. If You Had Wings was still open while Mexico was going, so you could see that same gag in two places at once, which was fascinating. In the end, Eddie Martinez was inspired by the Plaza de las Tres Culturas in Mexico City, which contains a combination of pre-Columbian ruins, a colonial church, and modern architecture. So based on the strength of that experience that he had there, he decided that he was going to split the ride into three sections, or three cultures: the pre-Columbian culture, the Spanish colonial, and then the modern. The attraction, titled El Rio del Tiempo, which was X's title, The River of Time, opened on October 21st, 1982. So it took a couple weeks after the rest of the park opened in order to get it to let the guests in. So
they had to flood the canals. That's all.
Yeah, sure. There's some extra. So here's some like facts and figures. So the total square footage of the attraction is 87,207 feet. So it's a big space. The capacity was 1,920 people an hour. There were 16 boats, 16 standard boats and 2 wheelchair boats. So it was one of the first attractions that actually you could load a wheelchair onto, which I remember my grandmother got to use that when she went to Epcot. And I think those boats eventually made their way over to Small World because they were built in a very similar fashion. They had 2 extra boats just in case of any trouble. There were 29 audio animatronic figures plus 6 marionettes. And Brian, you kind of alluded to the use of film with the if you had wing style techniques. So there was 14,062 feet of 35 millimeter film and 281 feet of 70 millimeter film used in that attraction.
Huh.
Wow.
So it was surprisingly film heavy.
I'm trying to think where the 70 was used.
I'm curious where that 70 millimeter film would have come in.
Probably. I'm gonna guess it might have been some of the larger of the dances at the beginning. So there were
right. You had the dancers there. That's
screens.
Right. That's right. That would have been 70.
Yeah. So there was a lot of smaller ones, which we'll go over, but there were some decent sized screens there. So that might have been.
Wait. You mean Disney had screens before Universal?
All right, so let's take a ride on the River of Time.
Yeah.
So after you enter the pavilion through a 35-foot tall pyramid in the front, the Disney guests would find an extensive display of pre-Columbian contact art and sculpture. So this was kind of in the art gallery when you first walked in. Now it's like Day of the Dead stuff, but originally it was a lot more serious artifacts. As you made your way across the room, you walk through an opening in the wall and then down a raised ramp into the Plaza de los Amigos, which it still has that name. There's a sign hanging there that still says that today. It's indoors, but made to look like outdoors at night, kind of like the Blue Bayous at Disneyland, which is a beautiful effect. And this area is a recreation of a Spanish colonial town plaza. It's actually modeled after the city of Taxco. So if you ever go to Taxco, you may find something oddly familiar if you visited the Mexico Pavilion. Stalls in the plaza sold handcrafted items sourced by Disney buyers who visited Mexico. So originally, the merchandise buyers actually went all over Mexico trying to find handmade stuff. And apparently it was difficult at that time because there wasn't a lot of handicrafts made for export for the tourist trade. It was much, much smaller. So they actually had to work a little bit to find people that could do that. There was a store called Artesanas Mexicanas, which was inside a faux building on the left-hand side that carried a lot of one-of-a-kind items. Later on, it became a travel office, and I think it's a store again. Mm-hmm. On the right side, where La Cava del Tequila is, was a dress shop for women and girls. So you could go get fancy dresses in there at one point. Mexico City's San Angel Inn offered waterfront viewing of the Yucatan jungle and the boats gliding past in the darkness, not too unlike the experience at the Blue Bayou, which Brian talked about, which is a gorgeous setup. I know a lot of people talk poorly of that restaurant. I've had nothing but delicious food when I've gone. I love their drinks. I love their horchata. And it's just, there's something very wonderful, especially on a hot day, and be able to sit down in there and just, watch the boats go by and enjoy, the coolness and see the pyramid and the volcano and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's,
I don't think I've ever had a bad meal there, but I prefer the menu at the waterfront restaurant that was built years later.
Gotcha.
It's a little bit more traditional, Tex-Mex, Mexican-American. You'll find enchiladas and quesadillas and stuff, and
right.
The El Rio menu is a little more involved sometimes. I don't dislike it, but sometimes it's just it's an easier experience out on the water.
Oh, for sure. I think the food is definitely a lot heavier from so if you're looking for something that's lighter, yeah, outside it's definitely the way to go. So inside our fake Yucatan jungle, it's dominated by an ancient-looking pyramid. The background there is 220 foot wide, so it's just a big, enormous background. There's a lot of three-dimensional trees and shrubs and rock work that makes the area look a lot bigger than it is, and it's another example of really well executed forced perspective.
Am I the only one that just wants to get out and climb around in there?
No,
see with the lights on too.
Yeah, the lights on. I don't know how effective it would be, but
it probably looks terrible. Terrible.
But it is certainly pretty. And
I want to wade through the water. Yeah. I don't know why.
Yeah. I love the volcano. Off to the right, there's kind of a volcano in the background, and it used to spew lava and have some steam effects. I think some of that changed when they added Dr. Doofenshmirtz into there from the...
oh, yeah.
So I think they changed it up a little bit, but there used to be moving clouds and a lightning storm that was all done through projection effects, and it was really, really quite nice. So if you go over on the left and get on your boat, you kind of start passing through the jungle, and there's this neat little native hut that you go past, and a big Olmec head. Now, the Olmec were the first Mesoamerican civilization. They flourished from about 1500 BCE to about 400 BCE, and this is that kind of gray stone head with the tree growing out of the top of it that you see there. They were once considered the mother culture of the region, but scholars are now debating how much influence they might have actually had on the neighboring civilizations. There are 17 of these known colossal heads in Mexico, mostly in the areas of Veracruz and Tabasco. Scholars currently believe that the heads were of royalty dressed in ceremonial outfits worn during that Mesoamerican ball game, which they just call the Mesoamerican ball game. So that thing that we've all learned about where they have the ring on the outside and you have to take the ball and kind of the sideways basketball.
Yeah, it's a funny story about that. I took a archaeological class in college just to fill a credit or something, and I remember we were sitting there and they were going through how they discovered this, and I just looked at my girlfriend at the time and said, they were just playing basketball. Let's be honest. I mean, there was this whole rigmarole that the ball represented planets and the hoop was maybe so, but I think they were just having a good time, and maybe they got to basketball before Springfield, Massachusetts did.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, one of the things that I found interesting, going back to the original Epcot documents, is like a lot of the current thought about these things has changed drastically over the course of the last 40 years. Not only from a point of nomenclature, like back then they would call the people Indians. It's like, well, now we would not refer to someone from those areas. That we would call them either Mesoamerican or be more specific about the region. But a lot of the thoughts that scientists had at that point about what the functions of things were has changed radically as they've learned more. So it's been fascinating to see how much more we know now, than we did then, and I'm sure in another 40 years we'll probably gain an even deeper understanding of all this. So back to the boat. So we're on our boat, and then we kind of enter this vine-covered opening in the pyramid complex over to the right. And inside was a mural depicting musicians inspired by the frescoes of the Mayan archaeological site called Bonampak. Initially peeling and cracked with vines growing through the walls, the mural progressively becomes less ravaged, as if we are going back in time. So here we start to get the time travel aspect put into this. And by the time we get to the end of the tunnel, the mural looks brand new. And this was actually accomplished by having muralists in California complete the painting in its entirety in its new state, and then having a different set of artists who specialize in effects painting and placemaking add the aging and the undergrowth after it was installed in Florida. So it was a really very subtle kind of effect, but it did give you that idea that, you were going back in time. Ahead of us, at the end of this kind of tunnel hallway, we would see a stone statue of a Mayan priest, probably dressed to depict Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god. In the front recesses, holding the statue, there's kind of like this burning fire pit with smoke coming out of it, kind of similar to the smoke effects that were in the American Adventure. So that was a neat addition to have then, because that was neat, because it was always putting smoke up in the roof. In Pirates, they would never actually do real smoke. It was always just red lights. So that was kind of a big deal for 82. And then as we approach the statue, it begins to talk.
Centuries ago, a great civilization flourished in my Mexico. This advanced culture produced remarkable scientists, mathematicians, and builders of magnificent temples.
So as we approach the stone figure, he suddenly changes from stone to flesh, thanks to a Pepper's Ghost effect. And then he tells us,
Welcome to that Mexico.
This reset for every boat, right?
Yes, it would. And sometimes if the boats were timed out properly, you would only see that one time. But if something happened where one of the boats got backed up, you might catch it kind of like part of the way through or twice. I'm sure that's happened to me before. And in the original plans, it kind of looks like the character, after he does the transformation, was meant to move and kind of open up his arms. But in the end, that was one of those things that just got cut for budgetary reasons. So it just flipped between two static figures. And which one of them now is at the fleshy version is at the Bowers Museum. There's a lot of wonderful artifacts from different Disney attractions there, including that fellow. So go out and see it. So as the boat turns left, we enter a pre-Columbian city. To tell the stories of the Mayan and the Toltec and the Aztec cultures, Disney made what was then considered to be a unique choice to depict them with dance. Eddie Martinez hired an actual Aztec dancer, Florencio Yescas, to choreograph the dances, and Yescas' troupe not only performed them, but also fabricated the majority of the costumes, which were designed by Ray Aragon. So they made their own costumes anyway, so they just took the designs. The Disney department made a couple of them, but they made the vast majority of them. 6 films were shot at the Disney Studios in Burbank on either blue screen or black velvet backgrounds, so that special effects and other backgrounds could be added later. Each ran about a minute in time, and the dancers end kind of back in their starting positions as much as possible to make the loops as seamless as possible, because these just ran in continuous loops on cabinets. And I have some details about the dances, which probably don't surprise any of you. Of the 6, there was Mathematics and Astronomy, which depicts the Mayans' relationships with the universe. This was represented by 3 dancers with a swirling backdrop of stars behind them and dry ice under their feet. That was the first one. Then came Nature and Science, which is about the relationship between man and the elements of the universe. Did I just say that? No. Yes, I did. That is all right. So the next one was Natures and Science. Dancers represented sort of the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. Tonatiuh was the god of the sun, and Tachiutekua was the goddess of running water. I have not been able to identify the other 2 as of yet, but it's really neat that these people obviously did their research in a very deep way to make sure that this was, authentic to what was going on.
You've hit on so many random words that, like, I remember hearing from various things that relate to Mexican culture, Aztec culture, like, and then these random words you're saying, I feel like I've seen them in the video game Zuma, where it's you shoot the colored balls into the Aztec, the different things.
Oh,
It's a great game.
Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, I just jumped in. I was like, wow, these words are all sounding familiar.
I know, that's fine. That's fine. See, well, that's interesting that it managed to permeate pop culture during that time in some other ways too. It was Quetzalcoatl, and I cannot pronounce this. Tezcatlipoca, which is so Quetzalcoatl was the feathered serpent god, and the jaguar god was Tezcatlipoca. They kind of portray this as like a fight between good and evil, but when I was reading some of the folklore, it's not quite that clear. It's not a pure good and a pure evil. There's kind of but in their folklore, it's like those 2 characters did fight. So that was something pulled from there. There was another scene of Aztec warriors, a jaguar warrior and an eagle warrior, being given weapons to battle by a 3rd warrior who may be dressed as a wolf. This was interesting. So in the actual Aztec warrior culture, the classes were actually divided up into 2 sections. So there were ones that dressed like eagles, and there was another set that dressed like jaguars. So they actually wore costuming as they would go into battle that looked like that.
The Jets and the Sharks?
Yeah. And you could only become a jaguar if you had if you had captured 4 people in battle. It was considered
or if you were handy with a knife.
Yeah. It was considered to be you were unskilled if you actually had to kill your opponent. Capturing them was actually much more important than killing them. So I thought that was really something that was surprising. The biggest one was the marketplace. where there were kind of like 14 dancers on a multi-level set with a king or leader looking down on them. So that was, they had pots and pottery and vegetables and things that they would kind of dance around on that one. And then the final movie was Moctezuma's Palace. So it depicts Moctezuma, who I think we would probably mispronounce as Montezuma most of the time. So Moctezuma II, the last ruler of the Aztec, and who probably looks like a court astronomer, watching a shooting star go by in the night sky. And I think this is a reference to a legend that in 1509 that ruler saw a comet, and it was one of the 8 omens that predicted the arrival of the Spanish and then the end of that civilization. So that's kind of a fitting end to that section,
scene,
which really does then transition into, the Spanish colonial conquest, which they obviously don't show all the blood and the gore. They just go into this very nice, children. And I think that's why it really is about kids. There were some earlier sketches and paintings done depicting adults during this time, but I think choosing to go with children as the focus kind of not only lightens it, for sure, but then also takes the emphasis off of, the killing and the upheaval, and more on, the period of time after the happiness, right. Certainly the lightness, and the integration of the two cultures together at that point. So this section is called the Festival of the Children, and it's meant to represent colonial Mexico and its half Spanish, half native population. The audio animatronic figures are meant to have the appearance of paper mache, which is actually an art form in Mexico known as cartonera. So there is a reason that they are not super realistic. I believe, Brian, as you said, it is true. I think they are built on the mechanisms of It's a Small World dolls. But they, look different and appropriate because of that art direction change. There are vignettes depicting scenes of what I think are many different kinds of festivals in play. The very recognizable one to us, I think, is the Day of the Dead Skeletons as a mariachi band that appear in the Archway Bridge going over the water. But there are also other things like a boy trying to break a piñata during the boy trying to break a piñata, which I believe would be during Las Posadas, a pre-Christmas celebration, kind of the 12 to 14 days that lead up to Christmas, much like what we have. There is a boy carrying a toro de fuego, also known as the vaca loca, which is that bowl with the fireworks around it, and there's a little girl with fireworks, and there's a really fascinating ceremony around a holiday called San Juan de Dios, where a little kid carries, or an adult carries a bull through a crowd, and they kind of do like a running of the bull things, except with this bull spewing fireworks everywhere.
There's a great scene in Fletch where the waiter brings him something, and he has an exchange with him. The waiter says, "Muchas gracias," and Fletch turns and says, "Tierra del Fuego." And throughout high school, Mr. Gant, who was our Spanish teacher in high school, I would pass him in the hallway, and I'd say, "Tierra del Fuego."
Right in here. It's good. It's very nice. You want one nice setup? Oh, thank you. I'll take care of it. Give each other $20, okay? Put it on Underhill. Muchas gracias. Tierra del Fuego.
So how many are wondering, when is the overlay to Coco in this scene being made?
Yeah, I don't know about that.
There's some similarities to.
There are, but
yeah,
fascinating that this is, again, if you just float through this as I did for all these years, it's like without knowing what these individual connections are, you really have no idea how much of the culture. You're like, oh, that's really cute. But there are actually like very deep references to the culture. Like one thing that I had no idea about, which actually Brian predicted that I would have looked into this. I didn't even know I was going to do it. So, piñatas, I always think, piñatas, that's just, it's birthday parties, whatever. There's actually, in the Mexican Catholic tradition, the piñata has this whole deep meaning where it's actually representing the struggle of man against temptation. There's 7 points on the piñata. Each one of those represents the 7 deadly sins. The pot represents evil, and the seasonal fruit and candy that would be inside are the temptations of evil. The person with the stick is blindfolded to represent faith. And then the turning and the, like, when you spin somebody around, that's like the disorientation that temptation creates. And in some traditions, the participant is turned 33 times, like 1 time for each year in Christ's life. And now there was actually a piñata in the pre-Columbian things too, but of course, as tends to happen, it's like as a Christian religion comes into areas, they like take local customs and adopt it. But
that's our whole basis of Christmas. As you know, Christmas was a pagan celebration that we then took all of the traditions and bits of it and then turned it into a Christian thing.
Yeah. So when the participant beats the piñata, it's supposed to represent the struggle against temptation and evil, and then when it breaks, the treats coming out represents the rewards of keeping your faith. Which just
you get a Tootsie Roll. Who didn't know? That's great.
Right. Nuts. And also, so in the there's a little band off to the right when you come in. So there's a marimba players at the end, but there's this band with like a tuba and a trombone and a big drum. That's actually something called banda music from the Sonora region of Mexico. And that's not all. A boy and a girl dance the jarabe, Mexico's national dance, known in the United States by the name the Mexican hat dance. The boy is dressed in a traditional cabochero suit, and the girl is in a China poblana dress. There's 2 boys on the left side of the bridge wearing old man masks doing the Danza de los Viejitos from the Lake Petsacuro region. And then on the left side of the bridge, coming down, there's a boy with either a devil or a Judas mask. And then on the right-hand side, there's another boy that has a red-faced Moor mask from the Dance of the Christians and the Moors. And then over by the piñata, there's a young girl performing with 2 skeleton marionettes. So marionette shows were especially popular in the 1800s and 1900s in Mexico, but they actually had roots that trace back to pre-Columbian times there. This is one of those things that always, people always talk about the level of detail that's in a Disney ride and how, it's very difficult to appreciate. But I mean, this is a real case where in this section, you float through here in less than a minute, and they have laid out all of this stuff for you that you have no idea.
There's nothing that's just there. It's all there for a purpose.
Exactly. So as we move on through here, we move into modern Mexico and its many tourist destinations. And I think it is important to try to call out, and Brian, you probably know a little bit more about this than I do, because it just seems like this is in your wheelhouse. In the 1970s, Mexico, 60s and 70s, Mexico was a huge tourist destination in the United States. Places like Acapulco, it's like, even before the cruise industry got there, a lot of it has shifted through the 80s to places like Cancun and Cozumel, but it was...
Well, and certainly starting in Southern California with Tijuana. I mean, the big thing was to cross the border and go to Tijuana. Right. That's where Caesar salad originated in the 1920s at Cesar Cardini's restaurant. He created the Caesar salad dressing. That's where nachos took off down there. So you had all these Californians. Famous story, I know I've referenced it with you guys before. Richard Nixon on Election Day in 1960 when he ran for president the first time and lost, took off in the afternoon and drove to Mexico for lunch, disappeared the day he was on the ballot for president. It's a fascinating story. But yeah, so it had the Mexican tourism had kind of really taken off there, like a second post-war rebirth rather, starting there, and then and Texas as well, developing border towns in Texas, and then you had Cozumel and those other places develop in the 60s. Puerto Vallarta was very big. The people would, like celebrities and rich people from Southern California, would sail to Puerto Vallarta. So they would leave the port of Los Angeles and either sail to Catalina Island, which is owned by America, or south into Puerto Vallarta for like weekends and things like that. So you go, like Ava Gardner would go for the weekend to Puerto Vallarta and stuff like that.
So really, it should not come into a surprise to any of us then that the modern, Mexico in the modern sense is really about tourism, which, as we know from a lot of these Epcot pavilions, that was one of the goals, was to try to get more people to come and visit the country. So you showcase the best of the best that you have to offer. And we shift again sort of in tonality from starting with like this very realistic, but ancient time to like the more small world whimsical center section with the children and the festivals. And now we go into what really is kind of that classic Disney style of combining film projectors and, sets, very much in line with If You Had Wings. And in fact, I was fascinated to find out what the deal was. So I had some email exchanges with Eddie Martinez, and he said, I said, where did that come from? Was that, were you working perhaps with Claude Coates or somebody that kind of gave you some advice on this? Or did you inherit this from an earlier version of the ride? And he told me, no, it was from Marty Sklar, because Marty stopped him in the hallway one day and he was saying, the budget for this isn't really, it's not Pirates of the Caribbean. He's like, so there's this attraction in Florida I want you to go see called If You Had Wings. Go down there and learn everything that you can from If You Had Wings and apply those lessons to your ride. So he went down and got a tour behind the scenes and saw how all the film projectors worked with the bin loops, and he took those lessons and in fact one whole scene and integrated them into his Mexico ride. So
I have, from my very first visit, and there's 30 some plus years ago now, there are snippets that have stuck with me. The scuba diver swimming up, which is now Donald, but the original footage of the scuba diver, I mean, I just remember craning my neck every time to see that as we passed. And then the cliff diver, and again, promoting certain things that there were cliff divers in Mexico. Mexico was famous for its scuba diving and its resort towns. So, the markets, if you went to Tijuana, you got that haggling experience of the Mexican market. So, it was a little bit hokey, but it was also very illustrative. And a lot of those Southern California Disney Imagineers that worked on this stuff, they'd all been to Tijuana. They'd all been to Mexican towns. So they had something to draw from, which wouldn't have happened if you had guys in New York designing it.
True. Very true. So let's talk about where you actually get to go to, because it's very specific is what's shown. When you first come in, there's like speedboats on the right, with water skiers behind them. That is actually in a city called Manzanillo. Then they go to Acapulco with the swim up bar, which I would love to know where that is.
Maybe you need to ask Eddie Martinez.
Yeah, I do. Hey, by any chance do you remember? Because apparently Acapulco was kind of like the granddaddy of like, that's where the swim up bar originated in all of its different forms. So that, and then there was a projection on the wall, just like a slide projector of like parasailers, like girls going by, which would kind of draw your eye over to the cliff divers from Acapulco. And there was dimensional rocks that you would peer through in order to see the film of the cliff diver. I don't know what Donald's doing there now. Is he? He has cliff diving still there, right?
They left the original footage in there, and then sandwiched between, he takes a dive off, and ping pongs off the rocks.
They have him doing a lot of this stuff that the films used to. He swims up now from the bottom, doesn't he, with his mask on?
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
He does, and it's all digital projection now too, rather than the film projection.
Yeah,
it really was. It's quite a travel log. This is really where you got that If You Had Wings feel.
Yeah,
I mean, probably the of all the ride, this is the most.
Yeah, on the right between those, there was a Danza de los Veladores with the spinning guys up on the strings. Like that was also shot in Acapulco, and then the underwater diver was done in a place called Isla Mujeres, which apparently must be beautiful to dive. There's a scene at Tulum with the pyramid in the background with the
Mayan
beaches.
ruins. I've been there.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So that's lovely. And then you go under an archway, and then you enter the marketplace that we're talking about with the duplicate scene of If You Had Wings. They did add a little something to it. There's a man and a woman now there trying to sell you things instead of just a man. And I think as they go to each one of the screens, they pick something different to try to sell you. So it's not like just following you with like the hats through all three screens. This time they'll try flowers, and then some umbrellas and maracas and sarapes and all kinds of different things.
Oh, cute piñata. Oh, please don't go. Just tell me what you want. I have many leather bags all the way from Chihuahua, and they're in the latest styles. Even if they fit. Sarapes, banjos, whatever you wish. I have the very best deals in town.
I always got a kick out of that, man. If you timed it right, the way that the boat was running and them following you was great.
Yeah. Can you imagine how difficult that must have been?
Well, it's funny. I remember being on a couple times where you missed it, right? Or if they bumped up against the side and you hit a little resistance, it wouldn't match up with you with your boat, or maybe the water was flowing just right. I don't know. It was but yeah, I mean that's. Not only is it getting the speed of the boat right, you don't know how those boats are going to act in the situation with ambient air and the load. But you almost wonder if they recorded that at multiple times and had the actors do the same shtick over and over again at different speeds, and then they picked the one that they felt would. Because you can't just speed up the film.
Yeah. Now, the one thing they might have been able to do is put a little bit more buffer of the blank, because they enter from the side.
That's true.
So
that's true.
They might have just shot, like, okay, give me 40 seconds of nothing here so we can splice that in before they walk into frame. Yep. But as we found from our research in Norway, like in Norway, which was really supposed to be like a 14-minute boat ride, and then by the time they got it in, it like lasted 4.5 minutes or something because the water went a lot faster than they. So I would not be surprised if they actually had to go back and recut that film to match the actual speed of the boats once they actually got it loaded and put people on it.
You just have no idea how they're going to actually react.
None at all. And then finally we come out of there into the last scene, which is the Paseo de la Reforma in Mexico City. So it's nighttime. There are modern buildings all around you. There's a 20-foot tall high carousel decorated with 6 marionettes spinning happily in front of you. So that's where Donald and Jose, Carioca, and Panchito are now.
3 of them from the one from Japan you're talking?
Yes.
Okay.
So there was this large carousel with marionettes on it there previously.
Okay.
And although the song has been playing the entire way through, the ex Sensencio Buddy Baker song Fiesta in Mexico really blasts out in this section for you to enjoy. You drift past flower-laden Traicioneros boats, and then up in the ceiling, what was always my favorite thing, even as a kid, was the fiber optic fireworks, which was awesome. That was the coolest thing in 1982 to see that. And then, as we exit that scene, we pass by a 7-foot-high and 20-foot-long mural in the style of an artist named Miguel Covreberas from his 1946 book Mexico South. That kind of shows the different regions of Mexico, which I think they updated that a little bit with the Donald thing, but left quite a bit of it alone. And then it's your visit to Mexico is over, and or at least the boat ride is over, and you're back in modern times, ready to go enjoy the marketplace. And remember when those guys would be out there playing that giant marimba? There were like 4 or 5 of them. That always amazed me. I thought that was the cool. I mean, I love Mariachi Cobra. Don't get me wrong. They're great, but like those guys on the marimba were knockout to me. It was so different.
Can I go back a second here? I love when the fireworks are going off, the city on the right, that like mural looking thing that has that look of lighting up. I don't know if it actually was lit up, but it has such an 80s
Miami. It's very Mexico Progress City. like is what it is.
Like pink, like that light.
A really interesting thing about the mural of the city too is that's it's blacklit, JT. So they use black lights with glow paint. At least back then. I don't know what they need now. Use now. What's really amazing, and I've mentioned this on a previous episode before. When you're on that attraction, you've seen it many times. If you've been on a lot of times before, look off to your right. Look at the detail of the individual offices and apartment spaces and everything. It's astounding what went into creating that mural to give it such a lifelike appearance. And not until you stare at it and look closely do you realize how much detail. I think it's one of the best murals that was done at Epcot.
There are
really impressive.
Lot of really good background. One of my favorite things is in there is I think it's right where the diver is. There's a painting of like palm trees and the beach and and the water, and it's just it's that beautiful old school background painting mural style like you used to see in Disney attractions or in movie backdrops, and you just don't see that anymore. I mean, you really don't. There's just some beautiful artistry throughout that. Even in the Fiesta section with the kids, there's actually a humongous mural that runs behind all of the buildings that shows other buildings and hills off in the distance, which you never even really perceive. But next time, go and look at it. It's really well done. Just that whole section the whole ride really is fabulous. And I don't think they've taken away from it too much with the updates.
No, we should talk a little bit about the updates and why. It's interesting because the I won't say outrage, but the disappointment or whatever you want to call it, that people had when Maelstrom was replaced with Frozen, and the discussions of adding more Disney characters to other World Showcase attractions. And there was a lot of resistance and pushback to that. You didn't really get it with El Rio. Not that people didn't love El Rio, because they did, but because this specific integration of characters makes some sense and has a lot of Disney history to it. And for those of you that don't know, the history is that in 1941, Walt Disney went on a goodwill tour coordinated by the Department of State, by the United States Department of State, through South America, Mexico and South America. There's a lot of footage. There's a Walton El Grepo, I think is the name of the documentary that they made about it, which is terrific. I think it's on Disney Plus now. But it tells you all about the different countries that he visited. And what came out of that in 1942 was Saludos Amigos, which was where you met Jose. And then the Three Caballeros, which I think was 1944, which is where you got Panchito and Jose and Donald. And so there is which premiered in Mexico City. There's a strong basis for having those characters in this attraction if you're going to add characters to an attraction.
They do work, and I think the historical aspect of bringing the actual animatronics back from a previous attraction, i.e. the Mickey Mouse Revue.
And those I think we've given credit. Did Jason Grant get credit for that? I think he did for that when they redid the ride and added the Three Caballeros, they left the stage area. It was a projection of the three characters. And I guess they knew they were going to close the Mickey Mouse Revue in Japan. And so they had the original animatronics of the Three Caballeros that was in Walt Disney World when it opened, and then moved to Japan in the 1980s and had been running there until, I don't know, it was 2011 or something like that. It closed over there. And then literally one night, Three Caballeros, the Epcot closes at 9 o'clock at night. The next morning at 9 o'clock, people are riding the ride, and those original three animatronics from the Mickey Mouse Revue of the Three Caballeros are in place of the projection. And people lost their minds because it was like an unannounced thing, and it was all of a sudden it was there. And I'm pretty sure Jason is the one that answered the question line, but they are the original animatronics. They've been obviously spruced up a bit in terms of appearance, cleaned up, but the actual robotics inside are the original 1971 robotics. That's how well they're built.
And I believe, too, if I'm not mistaken, those were the first audio animatronics that were actually previewed before Walt Disney World opened. There was an event in a tent on property, and they had some of the props and different things that now they could have been maquettes for all I know, but I believe they were the actual animatronics. So these might be the earliest ever seen audio animatronics and that are still running today, which is pretty cool. So pretty high probability that that's what they were. I don't think they'd build life-size maquettes and then life-size audio animatronics. Who knows?
No, you're right. You're right. It was those, and then like an early version of the Tiki Bird pre-show birds were. Yep, that's what they showcased there. For sure, you're right. You're dead on Todd.
Birds sell. That's the moral of the story. Birds can sell.
It was a press preview thing,
right?
I think it was. I'm trying to remember if that one was 69. I think that either the 69 or 68.
Before we move on, we also have to talk about the music in El Rio that is omnipresent from beginning to end, so that you walk out of there just
singing.
Bang 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 bang, because that's what the marionettes and the little kids are dancing to in those final scenes. Is that joyous music that I asked you when we were getting ready for the show? Was that an existing piece, or is that one that Disney wrote specifically for the ride?
And that was an original song written with lyrics by Exentencio and music by Buddy Baker. Done for that.
He did the lyrics to that too?
He did.
Good Lord. Look at this guy.
I think he read something like he wrote like 6 songs in his life, but like every single one of them was
Imagine
like
if he did a whole album.
God. It was like a huge
he's
monumental
like Peter
thing.
Frampton on Frampton Comes Alive. Nothing else ever hit but that one album.
So yeah, and it like as you hear in a lot of attractions like Pirates and Haunted Mansion, and as we talked about when we did the Epcot attractions, it's like that song gets remixed, reorchestrated, many times over and over again throughout that attraction. But even the pre-Columbian music, it's like a lot of it is really nice. I was listening to a bit of it today, and there's this really eerie, kind of spooky flute music that plays when you're out in the water, first getting ready to go into the time tunnel. Buddy Baker was fantastic. So of course it's just top shelf quality through the whole thing.
But let's admit it, they put the catchiest at the end so you would remember it. I mean, there's no doubt. I remember sitting in the tunnel waiting to disembark the boat, and you constantly hear it, and it was just piped in. So
yeah,
they know what they're doing.
In the kids section though, I could be wrong. I have to go back. It always just sounded like meow 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 meow.
It was like a Meow Mix commercial.
Meow, 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 meow.
Meow Mix brand cat food has a variety of 4 delicious flavors cats love. In fact, it's the only cat food that tastes so good, cats ask for it by name.
Meow, meow, meow.
Yeah,
that's what I was gonna
like
say.
you couldn't understand the lyrics. It was just this very kind of.
Well, Hal, appreciate your due diligence on that and your deep dive into the historical aspects of it. I never knew a lot of that history portion of it, Aztecs and all that. Really, like I said, it really does bring new light to it. Makes you appreciate what's there. That it, like you said, it's just not cute dolls thrown in a corner, that there's a lot more to the society.
Yeah, and so much of that is still there. I mean, so much of it survived, cast in a slightly different light now with the 3 Caballeros, but the guts of the ride are still there.
One last thing, I want to give a special thanks to Eddie Martinez for taking the time to answer my questions, and also to author Randall Shepard of Germany for his absolutely wonderful article in the Latin American Research Review called Mexico Goes to Disney World, Recognizing and Representing Mexico at Epcot Center's Mexico Pavilion. If you are at all interested about hearing more about how that art studio in East LA really worked to bring the cultural identity to Mexican Americans, back to the forefront, and also how that impacted the ride at Epcot, I highly recommend you find that article and read it. It's absolutely fascinating. And
all right, well, how we do have a new T-shirt to talk about too as we close out this episode.
Oh yeah.
Hal, why don't you tell everybody about this? Because this is we alluded to it on a previous episode, and I think we alluded to it in one of the home movie nights. But it is out there, and we've sold a bunch too.
Yeah. So one of our listeners, Reese Miles, no relation to Brian Miles,
only in my heart,
that
only
we
in
know
my
of.
heart.
Yeah. She has been a listener and fan of the show since about the age of 12, I think. And she's not 12 anymore, which is fine. She's in high school. And she has been developing as quite an artist over the course of the past few years. A few years ago, when we started doing the McFarkles, that became kind of a running joke on our show. And for those of you that have not listened to any of those episodes yet, the McFarkles is kind of like a generic term that Todd's parents used to use when they would be on road trips for sort of like goofy travelers that had like overpiled their cars full of stuff. Todd, you can tell that part of the story probably much better.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head and just didn't travel well or were kind of disheveled in their travels.
They didn't have the gold key card. That's what Todd's going for.
But, my dad was, there's the McFarkles again and going out on vacation. So, yeah, I mean, to your point, how we used it in a number of episodes a while back and became kind of a running joke, and especially really hit home when we joked about in the World of Motion episode, the family going on vacation that kind of looks kind of aloof and a mess in their red wagon, and we said, that's the McFarkles. So Reese created these characters and she sent us, she actually made a McFarkles greeting card last holiday season. She did some individual drawings for us, and the characters have evolved and developed, and she's got her own look and flair to them, which I love. So she, Hal said, hey, go do something, we'll put on a t-shirt. We actually had some people write in saying, I want a McFarkle shirt. I love the idea of the McFarkles. So Reese developed it, and unbeknownst to us and without us asking, she ironically put them in the red wagon as in World of Motion. So Hal, you tell a little bit about how you took that and turned it into a tee.
So she gave me the artwork, and I also immediately thought of that scene from World of Motion. So we turned it into an It's Fun to Be Free with the McFarkles t-shirt, and it is available on the site right now.
Yeah, so if you head over to RetroWDW.com/support us, we'll take you to our TeePublic site. It's right up the front there, McFarkle's Family Vacation t-shirt. I love it. They've got all the crap tied to the roof of the car, and her style is it's a little. It's the car's got this little bit of retro look to it, 60s flair. I love it. It's really good. And how I hate to tell you, her art is outselling your Camera Center shirt.
So be it.
And your Yoga Art Rockworks too. So she's coming up in the rearview mirror.
That's fine. You know what? There's always room. There's always room for more.
Exactly. Well, thank you very much, Reach. I appreciate that, and I'm glad we could get that on there and get you going in your art world. So you're now a published artist. So. All right, well, our next episode, we're going to get recording probably pretty soon. We know we've been a little behind. We put a lot of effort into the videos and films and everything. So first of all, if you can, check us out and join our home movie nights. Those are really, really cool. So you can, like I said at the beginning, you can watch us and watch a film you haven't seen before, a home movie film. And we narrate it, or not narrate, but we comment on it. Most of them are silent. There's been a couple that have some music and different things also said along with them. But it's a lot of fun. We do some other silly things like playing some intermission, cuts from the 1960s. So, and then the last one, I decided to attempt to thread a projector live on screen with everybody. Which actually, considering I didn't have a longer cable, it would have been better if I had a longer cable. But we threaded an actual Super 8 projector and showed everybody how it used to work, and they got an idea of why home movies actually started to fail years ago. So we had a great time. But the next episode coming up, we're going to do an episode on menus and ephemera and various tickets and things that used to be in the parks years ago, brochures and whatnot. So we've got a stack of those to run through. And JT, you're going to read from Birnbaum, I believe, about 2 hours worth, read line by line.
I have Birnbaum ready. I have my box of ephemera to throw out there because I love ephemera. It's so fun to me. I actually have from the they've been sitting on my desk here because I've just been waiting to share them. Ephemera from my grandfather's archive. I have Fort Wilderness passes. I have all kinds of stuff. I have the note. I think I showed this to you guys. Every site they stayed in from 1976 till 1996. He had a list. So all kinds of good stuff.
Cool. Excellent. Well, we will be back shortly with that episode. Looking forward to it. And if you can, give us a shout out and a review on iTunes. Follow us wherever you can on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and obviously YouTube. We're racking up the followers on there. Appreciate it. And look for a lot of new videos coming out. And we also have, by the time you listen to this, there will be a few episodes or a few video clips, or not clips, I should say full edited segments from Retro Magic that will be on our YouTube channel as well. So check them out. All right. Well, with that, guys, thanks to everybody for listening. We'll talk to you next month, and appreciate you listening in. And with that, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram at LBV History and on the web at lbvhistory.org. Follow Todd McCartney and RetroWDW on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at RetroWDW. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at RetroWDW.com. On Twitter, follow our web designer, Jason Bartel of Deepwater Studios, at JasonDWS. Our announcer, Andre Gardner, at Andre Gardner. And follow our hosts, Hal Bowers, on Twitter and Instagram, at GoAwayGreen, and on the web at KingdomofMemories.com. For JT Cougar on Twitter, at LS1JT, on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring, and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonprofit, nonpartisan, tax-exempt 501c3 organization, and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities. Adios.